Hey, welcome to Be Kind Review number 8. Um, I'm trying out these new, when you got to keep your carbs low, there's things that I miss. I'm going to say you miss. I can't speak for everybody. I miss freaking noodles and bread and shit. And I've had the bread that has like little to no carbs, and it's not really great, but I've heard that there's these like miracle noodle things. I probably don't even want to know what they're made out of, but I've heard that they're pretty fantastic. They certainly were expensive. So I made myself basically a batch of like ramen noodle stuff. So hopefully it's good. Sorry, but I'm hungry as shit and I have to eat. I have to eat in a certain window. So I got to eat while I do this because I want to get this video done. So this is about, originally I was going to cover the All Elite Marks, whatever they're called now, Georgia Heat, I think, podcast. I was going to do these professors of wrestling who cover the South Georgia area, and I was going to do Drew Blood's series. Looking forward to looking at all that stuff. But something funny happened on the way to the bank, which is this. I started, as because Larry had mentioned the professors of wrestling guys. So he put a link to one of their YouTube things. So I had to dig that up because I knew where I could find Drew Blood stuff because it's on gwhnewsandnotes.blogspot.com. And I think it's Trey who always sends me whenever Georgia Heat does a new podcast, which they've been doing more and more of lately. So I'm looking forward to listening to it. But I listened to the Professors of Wrestling first because I had to look it up. And something really fucking funny happened. It warrants a whole video by itself. So I'll definitely get to the other two guys since my goal is to try to put out loosely a video a day. And I've been sticking to that more or less. I'm not always going to hit it, especially on weekends, but it's my goal. And the Professors of Wrestling it warrants a whole video by itself. In short, it's good. And I didn't think it would be, but it is. I listened to episode 21, which was, I think, the latest one. It's the one that's been done this year so far. And it's a podcast, but for their YouTube, they definitely have some other stuff going on visually once in a while to make it appealing. But you can certainly just listen to it. Just like I'm sure there are people that don't watch these videos, but listen to them in some way, shape, or form, which is great. They start off with this banter. It's two guys. It's Dave and Dorian. My short notes were Dave's got the energy, Dorian not so much. I put that's not necessarily a bad thing, but for certain things it was. Um, Dave goes on to talk about how they were going to come up with wrestling gimmicks for themselves and how he's going to be the disruptor, but he couldn't really flesh it out beyond that. And then Dorian had more to say about his Nacho Man gimmick where he eats nachos and has nachos thrown at him, which they both seem to think was more fleshed out of the two and had like more of a shelf life. And I was just like, these two things are terrible. And it immediately gave me the impression of, oh fuck, I got to listen to these two wrestling fans that don't know shit from Shinola. And my first impression was, oh fuck. Plus, their intro is way too fucking long because it's one sort of like promo clip after another, which is a great idea, and then it builds into them saying the professors of wrestling, which is really cool. But the thing is way too fucking long. That intro, especially for YouTube, intros on YouTube are 10 seconds tops, and there's a reason. Fucking get to it. It's just my impression. That's just my opinion. And people might knock mine and it's like, oh, Steve, you take forever to get to your shit. Fuck you. It's whatever. Mm. They have a sponsor, which struck me right away. Ben Owens' music sponsor, and it was like a fucking video commercial. And Dave was a part of it, along with presumably the guy Ben Owens, I guess. And I thought the commercial was entertaining as fuck. I liked it. And I saw that Spinebuster was probably a sponsor for one of their other segments, and I thought it was great. Um, they talked about SWA a lot. They didn't bury the lead. That's what they wanted to talk about the most. And that James Morrison, Punkadelic James Morrison, is basically, is he retiring? Is he not? And then they immediately went into this thing of like, I think he'd be great as a, you know, the fucking oh my god, the general manager of SWA. I thought that was kind of cool. They just this you could tell they're sort of learned, smart guys who think about wrestling a lot and adore it, and that comes across. They are great ambassadors for South Georgia wrestling, which is going to lead to some surprising conclusions I have about their podcast and those two guys in fucking general, and South Georgia, and something that has needed to happen for years, and now I'm just going to force it to happen to the best of my ability. Not force it to happen. That sounds so fucking dictatorial, but it's something that it's something I'm going to take on, and I think it's long overdue. And these guys have inspired me to do it. We'll get to that. They talked about is 2020 when a lot of veterans are going to step out of the ring, but then become sort of figurehead like general managers and stuff for wrestling shows. And I thought it was an interesting notion. And they had some they obviously work well together, and they had this kind of smooth transition in talking about the NWA. I thought it was really well done. Again, like most fucking podcasts about wrestling, especially wrestling in Georgia, are shit. But the tapped out guys do a great job, and I'd say the professors of wrestling, without being like the tapped out guys, do an equally good job, and they really focus in on South Georgia for the most part. Um, they have a discussion about what it means, what South Georgia means. And, I thought about it and I was like, yeah, what exactly is South Georgia? And they said Macon and below. And then they amended it to go, well, Macon sort of gets lumped, things in the Macon area for Valley and stuff get sort of lumped in with Atlanta stuff, which is true. And so they said, well, let's just say below Macon. And I was like, great. Now they've defined it. I declare it so. They're the fucking Rand McNally map makers, as far as I'm concerned, as far as Georgia wrestling. Yes, let's call South Georgia everything below Macon. The two of them go out of their way to get to other shows. That's clear. And they really want South Georgia to get their name out there. And in fact they sort of, this is the one thing I didn't particularly care for, but I understood why they were doing it, which is this thing of like South Georgia versus the world. Maybe we need to put out shirts, and maybe we need to, but you could tell their heart wasn't really in it. It's akin to guys who can't get booked on a promotion, so they start their own promotion. But you could tell deep down, what they really want is to be part of the show that they're originally not on. And that's what I felt like whenever they were talking about it. It's South Georgia versus the world, meaning not South Georgia in wrestling. I'll get to that at the end. Then they just start going through all the fucking promotions in South Georgia. And clamored and fucking told guys, send us your shit. If you we're gonna talk about you regardless, but we want to fucking promote you. And I fucking loved it. They went over Hybrid Pro, which I've never fucking heard of, broke down their shit as good as they could. DCCW, Destiny Combat Championship Wrestling, apparently had not given them any kind of news or anything to bounce off of. And they're like, we tried to contact them. So these motherfuckers, who are learned, busy men, are going out of their way to connect with all of these groups to talk about them and make them important. And a bunch of them are fucking falling up short. Well, those groups need to get their shit together, because these guys are fucking advocating for you. Spinebuster, of course. Spinebuster does such a great job of fucking giving you everything you need or want. So they did a deep analysis of Spinebuster, like their angles, where they thought they were going. It was really informative and great. this group called Broken Bones, which again I've never fucking heard of, and they were doing their level best. You could tell they didn't even know a lot of the people on the Broken Bones poster, but they were doing their best to sort of talk about and put over things that they were promoting. And Sunbelt Wrestling Entertainment, who apparently have not done many shows, they painted it as they're doing less shows because they want to improve the quality of the shows. Again, these guys are fucking advocates, and I love it. And so Sunbelt, get your shit into them. And same with you, DCCW and all this shit, right? Then they talked about SWA in depth. They broke it down match by match. And because it's on YouTube, but it's based on an audio podcast, they would have pictures of the matches. And their review was incredibly honest. The crowd was completely silent during this match. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I loved it. Their analysis of all the matches was right on point. They put up pictures of all the matches. They went through it match by match. Obviously, they're clearly at the card. And then for the biggest match, which was the Rob Grimes, James Morrison thing for the title, which the heel wins, they had actual clips of the matches during pivotal points. I can't ask for more than that. You're fucking saving me the time of going it. You're breaking it down for me. You're doing the analysis. It's great. And when the two of them banter back and forth, Dorian and Dave, when they're bantering back and forth, it's really effective. As the show went on, they got more and more comfortable with each other. You could tell. And I liked that they were sort of fantasy booking. They are wrestling fans. And then they're like, well, maybe we should fantasy book who the general managers should be for each promotion. And I went, that's interesting. I hate general managers, for the record, but I'm interested in what they would have said. But then they backed off of it, and I was like, fuck. That's one thing. If you guys come up with an idea, just run with it. I do it all the time. Not everything's going to work, but I loved it, when they were saying who are guys that they could bring in to wrestle so-and-so and such, and one of them saying, well, as long as we're fantasy booking, let's say Effie and how that would work in the show and blah, blah, blah. And then they promoted that next SWA show. And then they put out this thing of South Georgia versus everybody again. They kept using this phrase like, we want to be Taco Bell famous, so follow us on Instagram. And they constantly gave out their information without being overly intrusive about it. And then they did this thing where it's like, if you want to cut a promo, if you're a wrestler or a promotion that wants to cut a promo, hell, if you want a fan that wants to cut a promo in favor of one of the leagues you love, fucking send it to us and we'll put it on and blah, 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 blah. I just found it to be very refreshing. I'm very inclusive. I'm with Tipping Point, Larry and I, though officially people could call in from the outside, we don't really encourage it. These guys are fucking wide open. So my short review is South Georgia should be fucking kissing these guys' asses. Because they do a great job. They're smart, learned dudes. I think they're comparable in some ways to the tapped out guys. I think the tapped out guys are a little slicker and that kind of thing. But I think the professor guys clearly have a love of what they're doing, are going out of their way to cover every promotion in South Georgia because they clearly see South Georgia as underrepresented, which is what South Georgia itself has been saying for years. So, let's get to what I think should happen next. With their permission, of course, I'm going to talk to Larry. Georgia Wrestling History needs to post all of these guys' shit. The professors of wrestling. I already subscribed to them on YouTube, but I need to befriend these guys. And it's time for South Georgia to be brought into the fold. Not underneath the umbrella of Georgia Wrestling, but to be a fucking part of it. The shit's not going to get better until it gets better. And frankly, it sounds like there are a couple of South Georgia promotions in particular that are using decent talent and have a vision. And I think they need to be included. I think instead of us acting like the people in not South Georgia, acting like South Georgia is shit, and South Georgia just having a fucking ass and an attitude about it, I think we both need to just go like, fuck it. They're a part of this shit. All of them need to send their shit into Georgia Wrestling History. We need to include the fucking professors of wrestling who are talking about them extensively and know them incredibly well. I'm going to try to have a working relationship with those fucking guys and have the state and have Georgia Wrestling History really cover all of Georgia. Thank you to the professors of wrestling for inspiring me. Apparently they told Larry they wanted me to look at it and review it and whatever. And I like that level of confidence that they're like, yeah, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that, but I like to think that it did. And I have listened, and I listened to it thoroughly and extensively. And I went back and listened to the episode before, and this is what they do. They do consistent coverage of all of South Georgia that they can. They're advocates, they're positive, they're fun, they're smart, and it's time South Georgia was brought in. And I know a lot of people might have opinions about that, both pro and con, but fuck you. My opinion is simple. If it's true, and it is, that I want to help Georgia wrestling, and I want to clean it up, and I want to make it better, South Georgia needs to be part of the discussion. And the guys that work in both areas, that's great. Like David Ali and shit, who's on cards there and cards, that's great. But it shouldn't be South Georgia and everybody else. It should be everybody. Now that doesn't mean South Georgia can't hold on to a little bit of fucking territorial shit and like, fuck that. We think we're better, and now that we're gonna get some attention, we're gonna show them. Good. I say good. And there are people who may not like, you want the attention until you get it, and then you don't want it. Because now, if there are really eyes on you beyond just the professors of wrestling, are you going to stack up? The standards are different, right? Expectations of promotions and posters. Most of their posters, I'll say this, which they put up, looked okay. Some of them looked better than others, but none were what I would call spectacular. They're going to have to get better. But isn't that good too? To put a metaphor on it, I don't want necessarily South Georgia to feel like it's getting gentrified by North Georgia wrestling, but can we clean up the neighborhood a little bit? What can South Georgia take from now being part of the mix and just going like, okay, our competition in certain aspects is Southern Honor and Southern Fried and AWE and Action and Viral, etc., etc. I also like that the professors of wrestling covered promotions that were also in Alabama, fucking Florida nearby, and all that kind of shit. It's great. But before we can break down the lines between Georgia and Florida, Georgia and fucking Alabama, Georgia and Tennessee, we got to start with our own. We got to start with the fucking state, guys, of Georgia. Obviously, I'm going to start going to Florida shit, which is going to lead to different people watching my videos and different kind of coverage. But I think South Georgia is a great place to start, and it's long overdue, my opinion. And the professors of wrestling, thank you for your fucking podcast. Now I have another fucking thing that I'm going to listen to on the regular. Thanks, guys. I think they do it about twice a month. In any case, that's my Be Kind review number 8 of the professors of wrestling. I will put a link to their YouTube below, and through that you can find them on every other thing. Facebook. They probably have an Instagram or a Twitter or whatever. But YouTube, I think, is a great place to start because then you can find their videos and podcasts related to the videos and interviews that they do with some South Georgia big timers and that kind of thing. Thank you, professors of wrestling. Thank you, Larry, for suggesting that I look at it. I think 2020, it's a great year that, you know, in baseball, the phrase World Series, of course, it still means something, but it feels weird at the same time, right? You're calling it the World Series, and I'm sure the rest of the world is like, motherfucker, we got baseball teams too. But we're calling it Georgia Wrestling, and that should mean Georgia, all of Georgia. And that means representation. But as the professors of wrestling makes it clear to the South Georgia promotions, motherfuckers, we're trying to help you. Send us your shit. So it's going to go with when South Georgia is really brought into the fold with Georgia wrestling history and exposure and all of that. That means they got to do their part too. But fuck, I'm having a hard enough time getting more and more promotions to send their shit in, though it is happening slowly. Anyway, I'll be back, and don't worry, I am gonna get to Drew Blood's shit. I'm looking forward to reading that, and the fucking Georgia Heat podcast as well. But this has been Be Kind Review. One last bite of the motherfucking noodle. These miracle noodles, by the way, the ramen ones, are fucking great. As I continue to do this YouTube shit, one day I'm gonna fucking mukbang like a motherfucker. Have all these fucking tubs of fucking noodles and eat that shit and talk about wrestling. I know that doesn't interest or appeal to you in the least, but fuck you. I'm interested, goddamn you. Shout out.